ahead and get started. Cool. Thanks again, everyone, for joining in. So I hope everyone can see my screen, and so we'll get after it for today. So uh, a little bit of a game plan for what we're going to be talking about during the monthly forum. We're going to start off with some announcements and updates just around kind of what's the latest across the newest Arc agent version, as well as updates from our kind of broader Arc community across SQL Site Manager. Then I'm going to be sharing with you a Windows Server Management Survey, giving you a little bit of time to do that. I'll hand it off to Prasid, who's going to be sharing with you a really exciting new demo of a private preview capability best practice assessment. And then we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite subject. We're going to be talking about Copilot scenarios with Megan and George. So we have a lot planned for today, and so we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll do the boring part first and talk about all of the updates. So we had the latest Arc agent version, connected machine agent version 1.42. Please note that it was the second release. It was the first release with some, I believe, network connectivity issues. So note that it's version 1.42, not the 4.1. Some of the main notes here are this new agent version is going to have certificate-based authentication support when you're using a service principal to connect or disconnect the agent. And additionally, the AZCM agent check is also going to check for endpoints used by the SQL Server extension as well. One other thing to note, we know that the intermediate certificates associated with ESUs for Windows Server 2012 are expiring. Customers actually don't need to explicitly renew those intermediate certificates, starting with actually the April agent release, the one before this in 1.40, coupled with the April Windows servicing update. Customers no longer need to update the intermediate certificate for receiving their 2012 ESUs enabled by Azure Arc. All right. So those are some of the smaller, kind of grittier updates. In terms of other updates from the ecosystem, one other quick note for the agent version. There's not going to be a June release for the agent version. So the next agent version release is going to be July. We just want to proactively share that for folks with the focus on security and fundamentals. In terms of what's next, we also wanted to remind folks from the SQL side, we had Nikita last time about the least privileges for Arc SQL Server. We know this has come up. So the least privileges for Arc SQL Server is currently public preview, and we're going to be making that automatically available for Arc SQL Server in the coming months for agent releases. And again, that restricts the capabilities with the SQL Server extension in order to be more compliant with a lot of the security networking requirements for some of our customers that we're seeing. And so you can learn more about that public preview, but we wanted to put that on everyone's radar. The next thing we wanted to highlight is Arc Site Manager. You've potentially already checked this out. It's public preview. I've been playing around with it on Azure Portal. Arc Site Manager allows customers to basically view and monitor their resources, grouping them based on physical locations. Think stores, restaurants, factories, and you can create these Arc sites to represent on-prem environments and centralize their monitoring info, their management across your sort of edge infrastructure. So that's public preview. You can test it out in Azure Portal already, and we're actually going to be having a speaker come in and speak to Site Manager during next month's session for June. So stay tuned for that, and we hope you've been having a positive experience with Site Manager. Awesome. So that's a quick wrap in terms of all of the kind of updates we wanted to share in terms of agent version, kind of what's latest and greatest. Next, I wanted to share with you this Windows Server Management Survey. So I've shared the aka.ms on this. We would really love your perspective on this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch tabs here, and I'm going to open this up. So I'll put this link inside of the chat for everyone. We'd love it if everyone could just take a little bit of time in order to try this out. All right, here we go. And so we're going to give you guys all a quick 2-3 minutes to fill out the survey. Really quick, just asks for name, industry that you or your clients belong to, including kind of the scale of your Windows Server deployment. Then we have a bunch of different management capabilities that are already available or preview. We'd love to see kind of what's most least valuable, kind of how that resonates in terms of the value, as well as if there's interest for taking all of those services and making those all consumable and purchasable through Azure Arc. And finally, we wanted to ask, based off of some different capabilities, which ones of these you're going to find most interesting in terms of preview capabilities or what's top of mind for your organization. So this is really informing the prioritization, the kind of bundling aspect, a lot of very useful feedback for the Azure Arc product group for us here. And so this is a great way to be able to kind of interact with us. So we'd love to get your feedback there. And again, I've thrown that ak.ms link into the chat. It's ak.ms arc WS management survey. So I'll give everyone a quick 2 to 3 minutes to fill this up right now. And once we're done, we can move on and we'll have Prasid get to the exciting part with some demos for best practice assessment. So we have some questions. Disaster recovery rights, the rights do not include backup ASR. That's disaster recovery where you can run your Windows Server license for your backup VMs. That's the disaster recovery Windows Server rights. And 3P app patching is on the roadmap for the Azure Update Manager, which integrates into on-prem environments with Arc. So those are those two questions as well for you all. And I see also above there's a question on Azure Arc Gateway public preview. I believe there's going to be update on that for within June for that piece. That's my understanding. I believe the June to August timeframe, and we're actually going to do a deep dive session on that for next time. So next time session is going to be all about Gateway. We'll have our colleague Jalen join, and we'll also have Site Manager as well featured there. Yeah. And thanks for sharing that feedback, John. We hear you that Azure Backup and ASR are really important features, so that's great. Sorry, go ahead, David. Great. Cool. If folks are done, then I will stop sharing the survey. And Prasid, do you want me to share your slides or do you want to take control?
It should go ahead and share. You have it open.
All right.
I'll take over for the demo though.
Yep. I'll hope you'll take over for the demo. All right. Take it away.
Hey, good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Prasid. I'm a PM on the Windows Server team. Some of you might recognize me from Windows Admin Center in Azure. I still work on that, don't worry. We're introducing a pretty awesome new capability for Azure Arc-enabled servers called Windows Server Best Practices Assessment. For those of you that may have used a similar feature on Arc-enabled SQL Server, you'll find this whole experience to be very familiar because it's a lot of the same UX and the same capabilities that we're bringing from SQL Server generically to all of Windows Server. So the whole goal of Windows Server Best Practice Assessment is to scan your Windows Server and evaluate the configurations based on the Windows best practices that we decide as the core Windows Server team. These configurations and best practices are constantly kept up to date with new releases of Windows Server. So for example, if any of you missed it yesterday, we just announced the RTM build for Windows Server 2025. Which is really exciting. We're pretty excited for that to go out to GA. But as we release this new Windows Server 2025 GA, we continuously update what we believe the best practices are. So when you run this assessment on the latest version of Windows Server, you'll get the latest guidance and security recommendations that come from Microsoft. Anyway, when you run this assessment, it'll run automatically every week or any scheduled frequency that you want. And it assesses your server environment for server baseline, server security, Hyper-V, failover clustering, IIS, or whatever roles that you have actually deployed on that particular server. So if you have a role deployed, it'll be able to check against the best practices for that role. If you don't have it deployed, it just sort of skips those tests. It then collects all of this data and uploads it to a log analytics workspace. So you do have an attach a log analytics workspace to it, again, exactly like SQL Server. Um, and then you're able to get a whole bunch of visualizations within the Azure portal for all of these recommendations that come out. And I'll show you a real demo of what that actually looks like. The cool thing, though, is what I'm showing here in the screenshot and what I'll show in the demo is you can go to a single server and run your assessment against that single server. But the reality is you can actually use automation to run this across all of your servers and then have one centralized dashboard to say, hey, these are my recommendations across all of the servers that I have deployed in my environment. You can do it across a site or across resource group, whatever you want, right? It's up to you. It's currently in private preview. We really just are code complete. Actually, I'm going to be honest, it's not even fully deployed yet, but by the time you all sign up for this private preview, it will be fully deployed and I'll be able to share instructions. But use that survey link down there, aka.ms/WSBPA preview sign up to sign up for the private preview. It'll send me directly an email and I'll send you an email with the instructions and how to provide feedback and whatnot. Anyway, let's take a look at what this actually looks like to set up and use. I'll share my screen here. All right, so here, Azure Portal, screen that I'm sure most of you are very familiar with, the single machine view of an Azure Arc-enabled server. There's a new blade here called Best Practices Assessment. Here I'm on a Windows Server 2022 device, but if you have a device running Windows Server 2016 or higher, this will work. So I'll open Best Practices Assessment here. It will get you onto this landing page where you will get started. Much like pretty much every experience that exists on Azure Arc-enabled server, the way this functions is through an Arc extension. So when I click Get Started here, it will ask me to provide a, of course, subscription resource group, but most importantly, I need to provide a log analytics workspace. So in this case, I have this log analytics workspace under my account that I will set up. And what this will do is deploy a Arc VM extension that is needed for BPA to function. Currently, it kind of redirects you to this deployment page. We're going to fix that in later previews where you don't actually end up leaving the page. But it'll actually end up deploying two extensions. So one is, of course, the BPA Arc extension that we have built for this use case. But also, because this is actually ending up uploading your data to a log analytics workspace, if you don't have AMA deployed, the Azure Monitoring Agent deployed, it will deploy that also for you so that it can upload your data to your log analytics workspace. So depending on whether you have AMA deployed or not, one or two extensions get deployed onto your server when you deploy BPA. This takes a few minutes to deploy, and once it deploys, it actually takes a few hours before you see your first assessment run and upload it to Log Analytics. This is not because it's like super slow, it's because there's so many tests that are actually running on your machine. It takes a whole bunch of time to run these tests, process the results, give you your recommendations, and then upload it to your Log Analytics workspace. So it's not that the first run takes a few hours. Actually, every time there's a scheduled run, in this case, it actually defaults to running every Wednesday. You'll see that it'll take that many hours to actually finally run and upload it. It all happens in the background, so you don't really realize it until you see a new result show up in your Log Analytics workspace. Anyway, I'm going to switch over to a server where I do already have this deployed. Again, same thing here. This is just a Windows Server 2022 data center. And I'll go open here, Best Practices Assessment. So in this case, right, it's already been deployed. You'll notice that you can do a whole bunch of things here. First you start off by saying that, hey, this assessment is run on a frequency of weekly every Wednesday. So actually this assessment for me was run yesterday. You have the ability to configure this. So if you go into configuration here, actually just kidding, you can only enable and disable it now. That feature is coming up next where you can change it. So for now, you're stuck with that time. You can also just run the assessment at any point in time. So if you're like, hey, like I made a bunch of changes where I saw the results from this assessment and I fixed a whole bunch of stuff, Microsoft, can you actually confirm to me that you actually, like, that this actually fixed the assessment recommendation? Hit the run assessment button, go grab a cup of coffee, come back in a few hours, and you'll see the result of your new assessment. Um, for each of the recommendations that you see here, you're able to click on any of them, and you'll get a whole bunch of details about the results that came up, right? So beyond this title that you see here, you'll actually see what the recommendation is here. You'll see the suggested action and how you should address this recommendation, what exact steps you should take within your OS to actually perform this. It's a little bit generic in that, hey, if you're just going to go into the OS and do the change, you can do this. If you want to go into System Center and do this, you're going to go to Intune and do this. Sort of the recommendations on how to fix it, the action are a little bit generic to let you use whatever tool you want. And then it gives you prioritization guidance on like, hey, how important is this for you to actually address? And how quickly should you actually go address it? And the weight here kind of gives you that same idea of like, hey, this thing that is 10.2 has the highest weight, and you should actually go address that first, as opposed to some of these that may be lower in the list. Of course, you can click View All Recommendations. That will actually redirect you to a workbook that we have built that gives you a prettier view of all of your recommendations. It's the same idea where you can click on any of them, get a whole bunch of details. The difference here is it actually, the workbook that we have built is across all of your servers. So in this case, I have BPA deployed successfully on 2 of my servers. And so you'll actually see the results showing up across both of the servers, and you'll be able to see which one is impacted by a given recommendation. Um, we're going to continuously work to sort of make this graph here prettier and whatnot to make it easier to read. But this is what we have for the initial preview. And that's about it. Would love for y'all to try it out. Give feedback, of course. The email I will send with private preview instructions will include an email that goes directly to me where I will reply to them, get feedback from you guys, continuously improve this experience. Yeah, that's it. Any questions from the group?
Hey, there's a bunch of questions in the chat. I think some questions are around the log analytics workspace. Does that have to be in the same sub or resource group as the VM?
Good question. It has to be in the same subscription. It does not have to be in the same resource group.
So, how about the average data consumption for the log A workspace? Do you have any
Oh,
ballparks?
it's like kilobytes. It's just like plain text that's being uploaded. So I'll go into a little bit more detail. So really all that's being uploaded from your server to Log Analytics Workspace is a bunch of uh, like GUIDs essentially. And then that GUIDs represent all of this data for us in the cloud. And so we take those GUIDs, we hit an endpoint we have in the cloud that reads this GUID and then reproduces all of this information that you see here on the right. So the cost or consumption of your Log Analytics workspace is like genuinely kilobytes, very small.
And does this support ST2 clusters?
It does support S2D clusters, but the recommendations are very focused on failover clustering, if that makes sense. So you won't really get recommendations around some of the things you're mentioning, right? S2D disk state, whatnot. But that's feedback we'd love to hear of, like, hey, these are additional recommendations that I would love this to incorporate. We've sort of focused on a set that will address the broadest crowd of Windows Server usage. That said, again, right, we are the Windows Server team. We're happy to keep building recommendations based on where we see customers needing it.
Awesome. And are these recs the same ones as those in the on-demand assessment?
Yes, they are. I will not say exactly the same. They're very similar to the ones that we've built for the on-demand assessment. We didn't change them or sort of redo that effort to recreate these assessments. And yes,
And
they are tied to roles. Yeah, sorry, Arnav, I have the chat open.
okay, perfect.
Yes, they are tied to roles. You cannot just select which ones you want to run the assessment against. We sort of look at your server, look at which roles you have already deployed. And if you have deployed a given role, we will run an assessment. We'll run the recommendations in the assessment against those roles.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Prasid. If the chat is any indication with all the questions and interest of what the preview is going to look like, you can tell we're quite excited to see this in action. So thanks so much for sharing.
Of
All
course,
right,
really looking forward to y'all trying it out.
awesome. And we'll put that preview link again in that chat. Great. So with that, Megan and George, I'll hand it off to you for the Copilot section. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arnav. So my name is Megan McCrory, and I'm a PM on the art platform team. And I'm joined with me is George, who is on our art portal team. So we're excited to be talking to you today about some of the investigations that we've been looking at when it comes to how we can help our art customers better leverage the Copilot capabilities that are in Azure today. And so what we wanted to talk about is just making sure everyone is aware of like what is actually out there and how you can start leveraging Copilot now. And then two, we have some really interesting scenarios around how we can actually help our hybrid customers better do extension troubleshooting and applying the management solutions to your environment at scale. So, and then we would love to broaden it, or let everyone give opinions around sort of things that we can do, other scenarios that you think would be worthwhile for us to go and look at. So with that, let me actually move over to the portal because I wanted to share a quick of what we're thinking about doing or the capabilities that are available today. And so here I am inside of the Azure portal. So this is just the portal endpoint. So this is the prod public portal. I now have this Copilot button. So Copilot is in preview, and I believe that we're actually making it available for everyone here soon. So if you don't see this button, hopefully within the next couple of weeks it will be there, but we can also share the sign up link for you if you want to go ahead and sign up for it before it's actually fully available. But here's the Azure Copilot link, and this is where you can actually just ask fun questions about anything that you want to learn more about your environment. And so one thing that we have actually been working with our Edge team on is how we can actually better summarize your Arc environments. And so one thing that you can actually do today is you can say, summarize my Azure Arc servers. And so what this will do is Copilot is now determining what underlying skill it should actually call to be able to perform this action. So it's trying to determine how can I best answer this question for you. And so with that, you can actually see that it provided a nice summary for me. So I have a cool summary report that actually shows here's all of my Azure Arc machines in my environment. Here's how they're distributed. Here's the ones that are connected. And here are the ones that I have alerts on. And so this is really nice if I wanted to actually go and, dig into some of these alerts, dig into some of the disconnected machines. I can easily do so through this nice summary report. So once again, this is available for Arc-enabled servers. It's available for HCI clusters and for Arc-connected clusters for Kubernetes. So you could run this summarize command, and it would actually go and pull these different reports for these different Arc resource types. I'm going to actually start a new chat though. And so just to kind of also give a few more examples of other things that you can do, you can ask other questions like how many Windows Arc machines do I have? And so this is now specific to Windows. And so I'm just going to go ahead and type that in the chat window. And so now, once again, this is live. Copilot is trying to determine how can I best answer this question? And so it's thinking about it. And now you can actually see it's going to try to generate an ARG query, so an Azure Resource Graph query, to count the number of Windows Arc machines. And so now it's actually going and writing that query. So it's actually pulling out where the hybrid resource or the hybrid type is, or where the type is Microsoft.hybridcompute/machines, and then where the properties.os type equals Windows, and then we're counting these. And so this is the query that it generated. And that should have actually produced a result, but maybe it just queried it, but let's see if we can actually come and run it here inside of the Azure Resource Graph query. So here it actually returned 401. Normally that result would come here inside of Copilot, but what's fun about a live demo. But two, what's nice about this is now that I have this query open inside the Azure Resource Graph, I could, if I wanted to, come and modify the query. So maybe instead of doing the aggregate count, maybe I just want to completely run this and see all of my Windows Arc machines here. And so now I have all of this information, and then I can go and modify that query if I choose to. Another kind of interesting thing is, once again, more information about your environment. You can do something like count the number of Arc servers that have an ESU license applied. So for ESUs, for our extended support updates, how many do I actually have applied? This is something that I would like to know, just to make sure that I have the right license count. And so once again, it is pulling a Azure Resource Graph query to go and pull this kind of data and run through it here. And so now it's actually pulled my resource graph query, and it's gone through and it has the right type again aligned. And then it also has pulled out the license profile details and has determined what the license state should be is assigned. And now it's going to go and hopefully produce that count. And so we'll give it another minute here to see if it will actually come through. All right, so now it actually returned that I have 5 Azure Arc servers that have an ESU license. So it actually did return here, which is nice. And then once again, if I wanted to go and modify this query, I could easily come here, and the query is here where I can actually do more. And so one thing that you can also do is you can check one of these boxes of like, how can I apply an ESU license to an Arc server? And so what this will do, it's actually going to now try to determine, it's not really a query that needs to be run, but it's more about documentation of how can I provide directions. So it's actually going to go and look at our technical documentation that we have, and then try to apply the best practices of how now you can actually go and apply an ESU license. So I've actually never clicked this one before, so this is going to be fun to see what the result is. But once again, this is just nice because it gives you a fast and easy way to gain insights about your Arc environment, as well as give you information about how, if you want to learn about something new that you heard about, or if you want to understand how you can troubleshoot a certain area, that's really where we want Copilot to be helpful. We want Copilot to be able to save you time so you can do other things. And so this is really nice. It actually gave me a really nice list of how to actually go and apply an Arc license or an ESU license to my Arc server by coming through and actually having all of these directions. And then it also links out to the other pages if I want to go and learn more. So that is what is out there available today. We are, though, looking at other scenarios of where we can actually help customers with hybrid environments do more with Copilot. I'll pause here, though, just in case there's any questions on the chat for what is out there available now for Copilot. See if I can take a look. All right, I think we are good. So let me then switch back over to the PowerPoint, and then we're going to walk through some of the new scenarios that we're looking at. So one of the first scenarios that we wanted to get some feedback on is basically, let's imagine that you have one or more Arc servers that have an unhealthy extension. How can you actually leverage Copilot to go and troubleshoot and remediate this issue? And so this is one that our team is focused on to see if we can actually provide some support here, because we know extension issues are pretty common. And so if we can actually help here, that is our main goal by leveraging Copilot. And so for this scenario, we're also looking at how can we make this a bit more proactive? How can we make sure that you understand that there is potentially an issue? And so what we're thinking about is maybe providing some type of email or notification that can be surfaced to you in whatever manner that you would like. And so in this case, it's an email. And so I've gotten this email that actually shows here all of my Azure Arc machines with that nice summary view. And then it also says that I've got an unhealthy extension here that I actually need to go and drill into. And so through this email, if I click on this troubleshooting extension, this will actually deep link inside the portal to my server inside of my extension view. So this is all mock-ups, but this is something that we're really focused on right now. We're developing a proof of concept. But with this, it would deep link you into this extension blade. So now I can actually see that I've got some failed extensions here. I can come and ask the Copilot for help. And so some of the suggestions are, can I help troubleshoot the Azure monitoring or the Azure monitoring Windows agent or the Windows patch extension? And so I'm going to just click the first one, which is now going to run troubleshooting. So here are the recommendations that it's asked to go and do, like verify if the Arc agent is running, check the agent logs, maybe reinstall the extension. And so next up, it says, would you like Copilot to troubleshoot for you? And this is where I can basically hit yes, help me troubleshoot. And so if I hit the yes here, that is now saying that, okay, Copilot has started the troubleshooting operations. It might take a while. We will notify you when it is done. And so the recommendation here was that Copilot will go and remediate those machines. And I think I might have missed it, but basically, I think the one thing that we do want to do is just make sure that we really list out the actions that Copilot will take to remediate this. And so in this case, we're going to perform a reinstall operation. And so that's where we call it out here that Copilot could help by reinstalling the extension. But we do want to make it really clear about the actions that Copilot would take on your behalf. And so then once again, after you click that yes button, then that's when Copilot will actually now go uninstall the extension and then reinstall the extension and then make sure that it becomes in a healthy state, and we can notify you once it is complete. And so this is where you would actually now get an email saying, hey, congratulations, the extension remediation process was successful, but hey, we also found some issues for other machines that have extension problems. Do you want to continue troubleshooting those with Copilot? And one thing that we're also looking at is not only having this deep link in the portal, but also some availability to schedule Copilot to go perform these actions. So maybe you want to uninstall and reinstall during off-peak hours. How can you go and set that up? So we kind of have a future roadmap of what we're looking, but at the beginning, at least being able to really provide the troubleshooting guidance and then asking if you want Copilot to go and execute these steps is where we're planning on really starting out with this scenario. Um, the last thing I want to cover with this too is more of the at-scale experience. So kind of all you saw, this was really focused on one machine with just a set of extensions on a single server, but a lot of us have a lot of servers out there. So how can this be run at scale? And so here I'm actually on the machines page where I have a lot of Azure Arc machines. Here I can click this get a summary from Copilot, and then I can actually see that for extension health, I have some unhealthy machines across some or I have 3 unhealthy extensions across different machines. Would you like Copilot to help you? And so this is where we can actually say, help Copilot, or help me use Copilot to go and remediate these machines. And now this is where we would actually go and select the machines that we want to make sure that we go and remediate. And then once you select your machines, you can actually see, okay, here's the extensions that have the problems. Here are the machines that they're related to with the subscription and the resource group information. And then you can select which ones that you care about that you actually want to go and troubleshoot now. So our idea too here is that we don't want to provide just a single extension troubleshooting experience, but to how can we really scale this out so you can actually fix potentially all of your extension issues if you have multiple ones. So that is a quick overview of where the extension troubleshooting is. Once again, this is in development as we speak of a proof of concept that we're going for. And so we definitely, though, have a couple questions for you just to make sure that we're going to build it in the right manner. And so let me go ahead, and I've already pre-created a few polls. So I'm going to go ahead and hit a poll inside of the chat window. And so the first poll that I've got is just how frequent do you or your customers have extension troubleshooting problems? And so if you wouldn't mind, this is a live poll. So if you can go ahead and start answering the question, we can see if we can actually get some of the responses in here. That would be excellent. Well, I see them coming through now. Awesome. So it looks like a lot of folks are seeing at least monthly is sort of the biggest bucket, some weekly, but it definitely seems that that having extension troubleshooting issue is pretty commonplace for a lot of you. So that is good to know. All right, our next poll up that we have is, let's see here. Sorry, this polls is loading. Okay. So next one is, would you find the extension troubleshooting Copilot solution helpful for your customers? So if you wouldn't mind ranking that, that will help us as well, just to make sure that we're focusing on the right information here. All right. All right. This is great. Thank you all. It definitely looks like this is something that could be helpful for a lot of folks. So really appreciate the feedback here. Um, and then last but not least is the extension troubleshooting user flow intuitive to you? So basically the mock-ups that I showed, did it make sense overall? Or if not, please let us know. Awesome. I'm seeing some responses come through. Cool. Awesome. This is really great information for us. Looks like it was intuitive. It does seem like we might need to have a little bit of work done here though too. So appreciate all of the feedback here. All right, next up is if we did have the proactive notification piece, how often would you want to be notified of extension issues related to your Arc servers? So we have a couple different options here for how often you would like to receive a notification that an unhealthy machine was discovered for your extensions that are running on it. Awesome. We've got a good number of responses here, so I'm going to move on to our last question. Looks like daily and weekly are definitely ones that are top of the charts here. Last but not least is how would you like to receive notifications? So I showed in the Figma mock that it was an email, but there's a lot of other options here in case there's another way that you would like to receive the notifications, whether it's through the portal, through a chatbot.
Now you get to figure out the demand requirement. At the pallet level.
Awesome. We've got a lot of good answers here. All right. That was it for the polls. I'm just gonna quickly kind of walk through the chat as well. Um, so let's see. So basically, definitely an extension update capability for Arc-enabled resources will be great. That's really good to hear that this feature is resonating with folks. Um, yeah, make it multiple times to see if there's a way that we can actually update the Arc extension from the portal and market for auto update like other extensions. That's definitely a good call, Matthew, and one that we can follow up on to see. I don't know, Arnav, George, if you guys have any thoughts on applying the auto update from the portal, if we know if that's something that's in plan.
Sorry, is this the auto upgrade for the connected machine agent or for extensions? Okay, I believe for extensions, I'll let George comment. For auto agent upgrade, that's actually on the roadmap for the Arc server side as well.
Nice.
So that needs to be developed before portal availability. Yeah.
Awesome. Just looking through here, a couple other comments. Great to know about ServiceNow and the third party. And yeah, definitely, I think it would be nice once again to have things customized for how you'd like to receive the notifications, how frequent, and then I think to who you want the notifications to be sent to is another thing that maybe we can think about how we can better configure this for folks. All right. Awesome. So if there are any issues with remediation such as failure, how does Copilot handle that? So that's a great question. So if the remediation didn't work and the machine is still in the failed state, when we send out the report of here was the latest of what Copilot tried to do, we would let you know whether or not Copilot was able to succeed or not. And then another thing that we're thinking about is, can we even offer Copilot to create a supportability case for you on your behalf? All right. I think that's about it in the chat. So any other thoughts on the extension troubleshooting Copilot experience before we jump into our next Copilot scenario that we're working on? All right. I will answer the rest of these questions in the chat looking at the time, and I'll go ahead and hand it over to George.
Thank you very much, Megan. Hello, my name is George Enenfol. I'm a PM for Arc for Servers, and I focus on the portal experience. So for our second Copilot scenario, imagine you recently Arc enabled hundreds of servers, and you'd like to monitor, collect logs, and protect your servers against vulnerability, but you're not quite sure what management services in Azure you can use. So you decide to leverage Copilot to help you find the recommended management services. And so anywhere in the portal, from anywhere you click on the Copilot button in the global navigation to open the Copilot chat, and you type your prompt asking Copilot for management services recommendations. And so Copilot gets back to you and is essentially asking that to be able to do that, we need to you need to select the services that the servers that you want to apply the management services to. So when you click on this button here, Copilot opens this pane for you. So assuming these are your Arc servers with their names on here, now you have the option to select which of them you want to apply the management services to. You can change the subscriptions and all that here. But what if, so the previous experience I showed you was, asking Copilot from anywhere because you don't really know where to go. But what if you know exactly where in the portal to go to enable these management services? So if you knew that, then you would come to the machines page or blade in the Arc Center, and then you click on the Enable Services button in the command bar. And by doing that, Copilot, you're shown a nudge where you see Copilot telling you to click to get recommendations. So you click on this nudge and you see the Copilot window open. And one of the options that you're provided is to help you choose the right management services that you need. So you click on that, but before Copilot can give you the recommendations you need, it needs some input from you. And so you need to, it's asking you about, so these are mockups, so they're just, placeholder text. So whatever relevant information that is needed, Copilot is gonna ask you, and you provide those here. And so once you provide that needed information, Copilot is gonna use that to be able to give you that the necessary or relevant management services that you need. And so in this case here, it's showing you 3 recommendations based on your user input previously. And so you can see that, recommendations with a little bit of information about what they are. And so it's asking you now what you would like to do next. And so you select that you want to enable the management services. And once you do that, Copilot gives you the option right in the chat to select which of those recommended management services you'd like to proceed with. So in this scenario, you select all 3 and you click on the submit button. But before you proceed, Copilot is letting you know that 2 of the 3 services that you selected require some configuration. And so it's going to help you do that right in this flow. And so you click go to configurations. And by doing that, it launches a configuration window or pane so that you can do the necessary configurations. So in this case, for the Azure monitor, you need a log analytics workspace, and you go ahead and you provide that. If you don't have one, you can create one on the fly. So that was the first configuration you did. And so the second configuration is for Defender. So assuming you have some content here, you'd go ahead and provide the necessary responses to the configuration, and then you save it. And so at this point, Copilot is letting you know that you're essentially done with enabling your Azure, your management services for your at scale scenario. So this is the flow for our second Copilot experience. At this point, we will proceed with a poll, just like we did for Megan's experience for troubleshooting extensions. So Megan.
Yep, so I just launched the first one, which is how frequent do you or your customers onboard to management solutions? All right, looks like we're getting a good amount of responses here. I'm going to go ahead and launch the next one, which is, would you find the onboarding management services with Copilot support, the experience that George showed you, helpful for you or your customers? All right. And then I think our last poll here is, was the onboarding management services experience, that user flow that George walked through, was it intuitive for you? All right, so I think that was our last poll. Any open feedback or open questions from anyone on the call with regards to any of the Copilot content that we just walked through or what's currently available today?
Hey, Megan, it's Ron. I had
Hey,
a
Ron.
question in the chat, and I was directing the question to you just as I was doing this, George doing his demo, so you might have answered it here. But just in terms of Copilot, so if I wanted to know things like, what services my servers are onboarded to. So I think George just started to go through that. I might have missed the very first part of his demo as I was typing that question, but what service am I onboarded to? What's my patch level of my servers, or what log analytics workspace am I connected to, or what servers are not in compliance with certain policies? These are all the kind of different scenarios that I know I work with customers. Can Copilot kind of answer all those questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if the data is available in ARG, then in theory, it should have access to it. One thing though that we are working on from our side is how can we better train the model to be able to answer questions that our customers care about. And so that is something that if you're finding that you're asking these questions, the data should be available because we have the workspace to Arc server mapping, and we can find the workspace on the the log analytics workspace, but you're just not getting the right results in Copilot, feel free to email me, because that's where we can actually work with the folks who own the Azure Resource Graph Handler to better train the OpenAI model to be able to query these things. And so, so in theory, yes, Ron, it should be able to do all of this. But if you're finding that the results are incorrect, that's where we need to do a little bit of work just to make sure that the model knows how to better execute and write these queries that can then return correct results.
Okay. And again, with all this information that was thrown at me at the very start, is this feature kind of available now for us and customers even to kind of use and begin playing with?
That is a really great question. So I believe we announced at Build that it was going to be publicly available for everyone within the next couple of weeks. And
Okay.
so stay tuned. Hopefully in June, this Copilot button will be available for everybody. But what we can do in the meantime is throw the link in the chat window in case folks want to sign up now. They can hopefully get sign up for it. It does require some approval from the Azure Copilot team, but hopefully it will actually be available for everyone within the next couple of weeks.
Eric, thank you.
Yeah, great questions.
All right.
Awesome. And yep, grabbing that link. Yeah,
Yeah.
George, if you want to wrap us up, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah. So if there are no more questions, I guess that concludes the Copilot session. So if you're interested in providing feedback, we would really appreciate it. You can participate in upcoming research by visiting this link. Megan is going to put that in the chat. And also, if you have questions about our Copilot scenarios, please email us at this email, which is also in the chat. That concludes it for our community call today. Thank you all very much for participation and attendance.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to the next community call. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.